Have you ever been in a room with someone who doesn't say a word, and suddenly you feel uneasy? Like every move you make is being watched, judged, dissected? You can't tell if they're angry, or if they even care, and yet, you feel this strange pressure building inside you. Most people think anger is scary. The shouting, the confrontation, the obvious threat. But here's the truth nobody talks about. Silence is far more dangerous. Because silence doesn't just confront you, it controls you. It makes you question yourself. It makes you lose your footing. And in that quiet, unseen space, real power lives. By the end of this video, you'll understand why silence terrifies people more than anger, and you'll learn how to wield that quiet power yourself, so no one ever shakes you again. Before we dive deeper, let's talk about why this works on a psychological level. And to do that, we need to bring in someone who really understood human nature, Machiavelli. He wasn't just a thinker about politics. He studied people, power, and control, and he noticed something most of us miss. Humans are wired to respond to signals. We read faces, tones, gestures, even pauses. When someone is angry, we can usually predict what they'll do next. But when someone goes silent, when they don't react, don't defend themselves, don't give you anything to grab onto, it throws your brain into chaos. You start filling in the blanks. You imagine threats, insults, failures, and most of it isn't even real. Think about a time you were at school or work, a friend ignored you, a colleague went completely quiet during a meeting, or even someone you liked just stopped responding. That tension, that slight panic you felt, that's your mind reacting to silence. It's uncomfortable because silence is ambiguous, and ambiguity terrifies humans. So here's the first lesson. Silence isn't just quiet. It's a psychological trigger. It exposes uncertainty, makes people uncomfortable, and gives whoever stays calm a subtle, almost invisible power. And that's exactly why it terrifies people more than anger ever could. Now that we understand the problem, why silence rattles people, it's time to see what's happening inside the mind when it does, and why that gives silent people an edge over everyone else. Now let's break down why silence actually terrifies people more than anger. It's not magic, it's psychology, and once you understand it, you'll see why silence is one of the most powerful tools anyone can use. First, there's something called cognitive uncertainty. Your brain craves patterns, predictability, and explanations. Anger, yelling, even shouting, they are predictable. You know what's coming next, and your brain can prepare for it. But silence gives your brain nothing. You're left guessing. Are they angry? Are they plotting? Did you do something wrong? That uncertainty triggers stress. It makes people fidget, overthink, and even doubt themselves. And here's the key. Humans naturally fear the unknown. Silence feeds that fear directly. Second, there's projection and guilt. When someone goes silent, your mind starts projecting intentions onto them. You start thinking, maybe I offended them. Maybe I said the wrong thing. Maybe they're judging me. The scary part? You don't know for sure. Silence doesn't tell you. Anger communicates. Silence leaves a vacuum that your mind rushes to fill, and most of the time, you fill it with worst-case scenarios. This is exactly why strategic silence can dominate a conversation or social situation. You don't need to say anything, and yet people feel pressure, tension, even fear, all because of their own imagination. Then there's the unpredictability factor. Anger is loud, visible, and temporary. It's easy to respond to, even manipulate. But silence is unpredictable. You can't see it coming. You can't argue against it or anticipate it. And that unpredictability is unsettling. People naturally try to regain control in situations they can predict. When you introduce silence, you remove predictability. And removing predictability is the essence of psychological power. Think about social hierarchy. Leaders, negotiators, and even successful managers often use silence strategically. A CEO in a meeting will ask a tough question and then stay completely quiet. People around the table shift uncomfortably, speak faster, over-explain, or reveal more than they intended. Why? Because silence forces the other person to react while the silent person observes. They gain insight, control, and leverage, all without saying a single word. Military strategy uses this principle too. Commanders know that silence creates tension, confusion, and hesitation. A silent pause before giving orders makes soldiers more alert, more focused, more careful. In personal life, it works the same way. Whether it's dating, friendships, or arguments, the person who can remain calm and silent while others overreact often holds the real power. Finally, silence works because it communicates confidence. Anger can be a mask for insecurity. People who yell often feel the need to assert dominance. Silence, however, shows that you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to react. You are composed, observant, and in control. And humans instinctively respect, or even fear, people who project that kind of calm authority. So let's summarize what's happening psychologically when someone goes silent. Your brain reacts to uncertainty. You start projecting your fears. Unpredictability keeps you off balance, and the silent person gains insight, control, and authority, all without saying a word. Anger is loud, obvious, and easy to defend against. Silence is subtle, invisible, and impossible to fully control. That's why silence terrifies more than anger. Now that we understand why silence has this hidden psychological power, the next question is, how do you actually use it in real life? How do you turn this quiet force into your own tool for influence, respect, and control? That's exactly what we're going to explore next. Now that we understand why silence has this hidden psychological power, let's talk about how to actually use it. Because knowledge alone isn't enough, power comes from action. And mastering silence is one of the most underestimated tools a person can have. The first step is strategic observation. When someone speaks, most people respond immediately. They interrupt, defend themselves, or over-explain. The silent person, however, doesn't rush. They observe. They listen. They notice the subtle cues, a shift in tone, a hesitation, a flicker of emotion. By staying quiet, you gain information others willingly reveal about themselves, often without realizing it. Here's a real-world example. Imagine a workplace scenario. Your colleague criticizes your idea in a meeting. Most people would react, defend themselves, argue, or explain their point. But if you stay silent, observe, and let them continue, they often end up undermining themselves. They reveal their own insecurities or overcompensate to fill the silence. Suddenly, you are in control of the conversation without saying a word. Next is silence in conflicts. Arguing, shouting, or trying to prove yourself often escalates tension and makes you predictable. Silence, on the other hand, creates discomfort in the other person. They feel the need to act, to speak, to fill the void you've created. That doesn't just give you power, it forces them to reveal intentions, weaknesses, or vulnerabilities. I remember a time in a heated argument with a friend. Instead of defending myself, I stayed completely silent. They kept talking, over-explaining, revealing thoughts I never would have known. By the end, the energy had completely shifted, and I didn't say a single word. The third application is social signaling. Silence communicates confidence and authority in ways words never can. Minimal verbal cues, calm body language, and controlled facial expressions project dominance without aggression. People instinctively notice it. They can't pinpoint why, but they feel it. Think about someone who never needs to justify themselves. That person commands respect because they appear untouchable. Silence makes you untouchable. You can apply this in dating, social situations, and negotiations. In dating, for example, responding slowly or letting someone chase your attention creates intrigue and perceived value. In social situations, staying calm while others argue or gossip positions you as someone above the drama. In negotiations, silence forces the other party to fill the gap, often giving away concessions or information without you asking. It's quiet power that works in every environment. Of course, mastering this doesn't mean becoming cold or emotionless. It's not about intimidation for the sake of it. It's about measured, strategic control. Think of it like chess. You aren't moving randomly, you're positioning yourself. You stay silent, observe, and only act when it gives you the greatest advantage. And here's the subtle but crucial tip. Start small. Practice in low-stakes situations, a group conversation, a minor disagreement, or a casual negotiation. Notice how people react when you stay quiet. Then, gradually, apply it in higher-stakes situations. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes, and soon silence becomes a weapon you don't even have to think about. People will feel the shift in power before they even know what hit them. Remember, The goal isn't to win arguments. It's to remain calm, observe, and let others reveal themselves. The quiet person always has the upper hand because they don't react out of fear or emotion. They wait, they watch, and when the moment is right, they act with precision and control. So, if you want to truly understand power, respect, and influence, mastering silence isn't optional, it's essential. And the best part? People never see it coming. Before you start using silence as a tool, there's something important you need to know. Silence is powerful, but only when used correctly. Most people fail completely because they misunderstand it. They think that being quiet automatically makes them strong, and that's a dangerous mistake. The first mistake is passive silence. People often assume that simply not speaking makes them untouchable. They think ignoring someone or shutting down will give them power. But passive silence is just avoidance. It's a signal of weakness, not strength. Others will notice your hesitation, your nervousness, or your lack of engagement. Instead of commanding respect, you create an opportunity for people to dominate, manipulate, or take advantage of you. Silence without intention is invisible, and often, it's worse than reacting poorly, because it leaves you powerless and reactive rather than in control. The second mistake is overthinking silence. Many people practice silence, but internally, they're panicking. They count seconds in their head, wondering if they should speak. They overanalyze every look, every pause. This anxiety leaks out through microexpressions, gestures, or tone when they finally speak. And once people sense this insecurity, the silence loses all its power. Remember, the true strength of silence comes from calm, not from struggle. If your mind is screaming while your mouth stays shut, you've already lost the advantage. Third, using silence for revenge or spite is another common trap. Some people stay quiet just to punish others, to make them feel bad or guilty. But silence used as a weapon of anger or resentment almost always backfires. People interpret it incorrectly, misjudge your intentions, or even react aggressively. Strategic silence is never about hurting someone emotionally. It's about control, observation, and patience. It's measured, not reactive. Here's a story that illustrates this perfectly. A friend of mine was constantly frustrated by a coworker who would interrupt and belittle him. Instead of calmly staying silent, he withdrew completely, stopped contributing in meetings, avoided conversation. He thought this would show strength, but instead, he lost credibility. People assumed he was disengaged, weak, or incompetent. That's what happens when silence is used without strategy. It communicates the wrong message. The fourth mistake is thinking silence is one size fits all. Silence in a personal conflict isn't the same as silence in a professional negotiation. Silence in a playful conversation doesn't create the same psychological effect as silence in a high-stakes situation. Context matters. Misusing it in the wrong setting can confuse others, or worse, make you appear emotionally detached and untrustworthy. Finally, some people forget that silence alone is not enough. Body language, facial expressions, and timing are equally critical. A silent person who fidgets, avoids eye contact, or shows nervous energy will be read immediately. The silent person who sits tall, maintains calm eye contact, and controls their breathing. That's the person who commands attention and respect. So, the key takeaway here is simple. Silence is powerful, but only when it's intentional, calm, and context-aware. Avoid passive withdrawal, overthinking, revenge, one-size-fits-all strategies, or ignoring your nonverbal signals. When done correctly, silence doesn't just intimidate. It allows you to observe, understand, and subtly guide the behavior of others. If you think silence is just about not speaking, you're about to fail every time. The people who master it, who understand its nuances, are the ones who quietly dominate rooms, conversations, and even entire organizations, without ever raising their voice. Next, we're going to look at a real-life example of someone who used silence strategically to gain unimaginable influence. A story that will make you rethink how you communicate forever. Now, let me show you how silence works in real life. Not in theory, but in practice. There's a story that perfectly illustrates the invisible power of staying quiet. In the 16th century, Niccolò Machiavelli observed leaders, generals, and politicians, and he noticed something most people overlooked. He noticed that the most powerful individuals weren't the loudest or the most aggressive. They didn't dominate with anger or intimidation. They dominated with patience, observation, and silence. One historical example comes from the Italian courts, where political intrigue was constant. A prince might face betrayal, insults, or outright provocation. Some would respond angrily, shouting or plotting revenge. Others, however, would remain silent. They would listen, observe, and let the instigators reveal their intentions, weaknesses, and strategies. By doing nothing, they gained information, projected confidence, and made their adversaries uncomfortable and nervous, sometimes to the point where the opponent sabotaged themselves without even realizing it. Fast forward to modern times, and you see the same principle in action. Consider a skilled negotiator or CEO. In a high-stakes meeting, someone might push hard, argue, or try to provoke a reaction. Instead of responding, the silent negotiator stays calm. They don't need to fill the void. Their silence forces the other party to over-explain, overcommit, or expose vulnerabilities they would have otherwise hidden. In those moments, the silent person gains the upper hand, not by force, not by words, but by doing nothing. The room bends to the tension they create simply by being calm, quiet, and unreadable. Here's another example from personal life. Imagine a heated argument between friends. Most people react emotionally. They defend themselves, shout, or try to justify every word. But one person simply stays silent. They let the other speak, vent, or even over-apologize. By the end, the dynamic has shifted. The silent person is in control, calm, and untouchable. The other feels exposed, flustered, and sometimes even guilty, all because of a simple, intentional pause. What's happening psychologically here is fascinating. Silence creates space. Space where your mind projects meaning, imagines consequences, and tries to regain control. Humans hate the unknown, and they hate unpredictability. When you remain silent, you become the unknown. You become unpredictable, and in that uncertainty, people reveal themselves, often to their own detriment. The lesson is clear. Silence isn't passive. It's active observation, strategic patience, and subtle influence. It's a tool that, when mastered, gives you insight into people's intentions, power over situations, and an almost magnetic presence. Leaders, negotiators, and Machiavellian thinkers have known this for centuries. The silent person isn't weak. They are quietly commanding respect, authority, and fear. So, imagine if you applied this in your own life. Every meeting, every conversation, every disagreement where people are trying to provoke you. What if instead of reacting, you stayed calm and quiet, observing everything? People would reveal far more than they ever intended. You'd gain control without force. You'd gain influence without effort. And the power of silence would become your secret weapon. Next, we'll take this a step further and explore practical ways you can master silence in your daily life, from small interactions to high-stakes situations, so that this hidden power becomes your own. Now that we've seen the power of silence in theory and in action, it's time to bring it into your life. Mastering silence isn't about being cold or distant. It's about control, observation, and presence, and anyone can learn it with practice. Step 1 is observation before reaction. Most people react immediately. They argue, defend, explain themselves. The silent person waits. They observe. They notice the subtle details, the tone of someone's voice, their body language, what they choose not to say. This pause gives you information others willingly reveal without realizing it. And information is power. The more you understand, the more control you have over the situation. Step 2 is learning to pause and breathe. Silence is uncomfortable for others, but it's also uncomfortable for you, especially at first. Your instinct might be to fill the void, to respond, to justify yourself. That's natural. The key is to pause. Take a breath. Let the silence stretch for a moment. When you can sit with discomfort calmly, you're signaling something powerful, that you are in control, that you aren't rattled, and that your mind is sharper than theirs. Step 3 is minimal verbal cues. Silence doesn't mean never speaking. It means choosing your words with precision. A calm, measured response, or even a single word, carries far more weight than a barrage of arguments. Your words become rare, valuable, and impactful. People notice it. They remember it. Your silence amplifies your voice when you do speak. Step 4 is context practice. Start small, in low-stakes situations like casual conversations, group discussions, or minor disagreements. Notice how people react when you don't rush to respond. Gradually, move to higher-stakes situations, negotiations, tense family discussions, or professional meetings. Over time, silence becomes instinctive, and people start reacting to your calm authority naturally. Step 5 is combining silence with body language. It's not just the absence of words that creates power, it's the presence you project while silent. Sit tall, maintain eye contact, control your breathing, and keep your gestures minimal. This creates a psychological anchor. Your calmness becomes contagious, and others start adjusting to your energy rather than forcing you to adjust to theirs. Step 6 is emotional detachment. Silence works because it removes emotional reactions. When people shout, argue, or pressure you, your mind instinctively wants to fight back. But strategic silence is a tool of detachment. You observe, you wait, you guide the situation without reacting out of ego, fear, or anger. That detachment is what makes people uncomfortable, even fearful, in your presence. Finally, remember that mastering silence is about consistency. It's not a one-time tactic, it's a mindset. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes. You'll notice a shift. People start over-explaining, revealing more than they intended, and giving you respect without you demanding it. You'll feel more in control, more confident, and more untouchable. Start small. Start now. In conversations, in disagreements, in meetings, experiment with silence. Observe the reactions. Adjust your presence. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the quiet power you hold will grow. You'll see people respond differently. You'll see influence without force. And you'll understand why silence, more than anger, terrifies those around you. Next, we'll wrap everything up and summarize the key takeaways, so you can start applying this immediately and become a master of your own presence and influence. Let's take a step back and tie everything together, because this is where all the lessons really hit home. Silence isn't just the absence of words. It's a tool, a strategy, and one of the most powerful forms of influence you can ever master. Think about it. Anger is loud, obvious, and easy to defend against. When someone yells or lashes out, you can react, argue, or even ignore it. But silence is invisible. It doesn't attack, it doesn't give cues. And because of that, it creates uncertainty. It makes people overthink. It makes them uncomfortable. It puts them on edge without you ever moving a muscle. And that's exactly why it terrifies more than anger. Psychologically, silence triggers our deepest instincts. It forces people to project their own fears and insecurities. It exposes cognitive gaps, uncertainty, and doubt. And when you combine that with calm confidence and strategic observation, you create a presence that commands respect, influence, and even a subtle fear, without ever raising your voice. Throughout this video, we've explored why silence is more powerful than anger, how to use it strategically, and the common mistakes that turn silence from a weapon into a weakness. We've seen real-life examples, from Machiavelli's political strategies to modern negotiations and personal interactions, showing that those who master silence quietly dominate situations while others overreact. The key takeaways are simple, but they are also profoundly transformative. First, silence must be intentional. Don't be quiet just to avoid conflict or to punish someone. Be quiet to observe, understand, and guide. Second, silence must be calm and confident. Overthinking, nervous energy, or emotional attachment will ruin it. Third, combine silence with body language and timing. The way you sit, breathe, and hold yourself while silent communicates more than words ever could. And finally, practice consistently. Start in low-stakes situations, notice reactions, and gradually move into more important interactions. When you master this, you'll notice subtle shifts everywhere. People will over-explain in your presence. They will reveal their weaknesses, desires, and intentions without you asking. They will respect and even fear your calm authority. You'll realize that influence isn't about speaking the loudest. It's about creating the space for others to reveal themselves while you remain unshaken. That is real power. So here's the final thought. Next time someone tries to provoke you, insult you, or push you into reacting. Pause. Observe. Breathe. Stay silent. Let the tension work in your favor. Watch as the room shifts. Watch as people adjust to your energy. And most importantly, notice how you feel. Confident. In control. Untouchable. Silence terrifies because it creates uncertainty. Anger attacks, but silence commands. Anger is loud, but silence is subtle. Anger ends quickly, but silence lingers. And in that lingering, invisible space, real power is born. That's the lesson that Machiavelli, strategists, and master influencers have been using for centuries, and now, it's yours too. Remember, power isn't about being loud. Power is about presence, patience, and perception. And if you use silence wisely, people won't just notice you. They'll respond to you. They'll reveal themselves. They'll respect you. And they'll never underestimate you again.